stupid of me to believe you would actually run for your life when having the opportunity to do so." He was being examined by the person sitting on the bed with his legs crossed and the blue piece of clothing laying crumpled up before him. Dew wordlessly left his shoes behind and went to get onto the bed as well, the other one's open arms waiting for him. But instead of going into a hug with him, Avery seized his wrist the moment he came into reach to harshly pull Dew towards him. His hands held them as tightly as if he attempted to stop the blood flow, and that as a person having been unconscious for so long, which took Dew by surprise. The gloves were stripped from his fingers and carelessly thrown to the side. The green eyes gazed over them. "You didn't flinch as bad as you could have, I guess," Avery commented, stroking the thin red line with his thumb which crossed over the palms and some fingers of Dew. He pulled away, asking, "Why did you do it? Why didn't you immediately—" "Me? It wouldn't have been necessary if it wasn't for you literally killing a man," he snapped at the Merling, who flinched back, staring at his partner with big eyes. "You are saying it was for nothing, or what? Would you have—" Once again Dew was interrupted by Avery, who slammed his fist onto his upper thigh. "Yes, I simply told Aaron about it, and he guaranteed me to tell Rufus, who would have done something, even if it was an execution. Now imagine they wouldn't have waited for me to appear. You would have been dead, Dew, dead. What a great help that would have been," he snarled, placing his forehead on his hand. With the other he aimlessly waved around, searching for words before continuing. "And for your question why I didn't act immediately, I must criticize your ability to judge a situation. There was another guard in the room. It was sheer luck he was actually sent outside, but for that to happen I at least had to act accordingly. Oh, and did you forget about this here? The hole inside my neck? Yes, he had a gun. Having acted too early would have gotten me a bullet into the skull before having untied you enough to end up freeing yourself after I passed out due to the bullet, not even mentioning that I had to safely get closer to actually hit him." Dew found himself feeling taken aback and ashamed. The rope had loosened the moment Avery had redirected his claymore from crashing down on him to swinging around toward the man sitting in the chair. Dew had pulled back in time not to sustain greater injury than the tiny gash on his hands, but the other two didn't share his luck in the slightest. I wanted to help you somehow because I know you wouldn't have killed him yourself," Dew whispered with his head directed towards his lap. "I would have done it myself the moment the opportunity would have arrived. I cut off Tiana's additional pair of arms and didn't even have to apologize." "Then why didn't you?" The moment he asked, he knew he had chosen the wrong words. "Because I was trained to a fucking bed, bleeding from countless areas because they didn't allow me medical care until I cooperated, on my back with my wings barely attached. And can you imagine that after losing several liters of blood to a certain boar hybrid stabbing you repeatedly in the wrist, someone might not be fully conscious? Probably not, because you don't think outside of your own little rage-driven instincts when I'm involved." The truth behind the accusation hit Dew like a fist into the guts. A stupid little Merling, an instinct-driven, mindless creature. He acted like that. He punched people in the face if he disliked what they said about his partner. He refused to bow out of a useless protest because his partner was hurt. He killed a person because it mutilated his partner. And now he was asking questions like an idiot. Shame on the man who hurt his partner by trying to protect him. Shame on the man who couldn't even begin to comprehend the other one's world of mind. He looked away, unsure of what to do or say, if he should leave or stay. He wanted to apologize. He really wanted to, but Dew didn't know how, and partially he couldn't grasp why. In the end, it wasn't him who filled the suffocating silence between them. Avery had his palm run heavily over his own face, breathing in deeply before speaking quietly. "Gosh, I sound exactly like my mother. Fuck this, I don't think you're stupid. I get why you do stupid trash. I fucking begged this older man for a second chance as if that would have helped us." Hiding his pain-struck expression in his palms, a mixture of choking laughter and sobs broke loose until he could do nothing but choke, holding his neck. When Dew next got to take a look at his dead partner's neck, he was met with a gaping hole where the projectile from the gun had penetrated the scales, while at the same time the holder of the weapon was stabbed through the heart enough for the sword to come out through the back of the chair. What did he think of himself, do you ask, still frozen on his spot and gaze sinking into the mattress and voice heavy? Did he see himself as some sort of patron? We talked and it left me confused. Avery's response came promptly. Of course it did. He tended to be so factually correct. He only misled people by leaving gaps. Tell me, what did you speak about? He said he left you a choice. That time when you were 16, I think. His throat tightened on its own. Ha, not incorrect. You can continue responding to my demands, but if there is a man in your life, someone you love, you can choose him. That's roughly how he phrased it. Dew's fists clenched, the numbness towards the dead king disappearing, because regardless of the wreck of a human his health led him to be, there could not be sympathy for those half-truths. Only as Dew continued to build up rage, his eyes lifted and saw the man before him again. Now he knew where the night had his way of getting into other people's head from, regardless of intention. Do you grieve his death? The Merling wanted to know. What do I know? He wanted me to kill him, I'm sure of that. He hated himself and his circumstances. Perhaps the only thing I grieve is the way he left me. After all I was to him was a worker, a loyal, stupidly obedient worker. Now that's what sex is to me. But enough about him. Are there any other questions I can answer for you before I go and talk to a person or two? There were many. How did Avery not notice the evil intent earlier? Why didn't he seek help? How did he appear so normal on the outside for all those years? But what he dared to ask was simple. How did you arrive here alive? Avery smirked with pain in his eyes. That's an interesting story to tell, and one that actually affects you. But please do me a favor and cut my hair while I catch you up. A certain pig managed to butcher it even worse than the first time when we were kids. Originally, I only stayed in the burning city to look after Sue. After going after the shooter, she didn't return, which already had Aaron worried about her. I found her about 5 minutes away from the place I last saw her, but she had already bled out due to severe wounds on her neck. Her helm was missing, and she leaned against the wall of one of the ruins with her eyes closed. I wanted to pick her up to get her out of the city, but before I could run away with her, I received an arrow to the back of my head, which went through the plate I wore and destroyed it. Attempting to dodge the following direct assault caused me to leave her behind. Afterwards, I simply ran to lead me and my attacker further towards the center with the goal of having him simply suffocate and burn before getting out of the place. At first it went well. Jonah mindlessly followed me, and he already missed his follow-up shot with the crossbow, so he didn't have a second one with the little time he had to stop without losing me from his sight. By sheer coincidence did I find a wealthier-looking area which hadn't caught on fire. Yet. The space was large enough to face Jonah. I was doing well enough not to go blind, and he was weakened due to a convenient wound around his lower torso, so I got the upper hand quickly and managed to cut off one of his arms. At that point, the little luck I had left me, and my vision got blurry so suddenly he had time to tighten one of the leather straps he had tied all around his limbs to drastically reduce blood flow in case of injuries as large as the one I had caused. I can't lie, even with one hand he could keep on fighting well enough, but a sword can't fully withstand the weight of a claymore. He disarmed me by throwing an invisible wall at me. Didn't even know he could do that. I tried to prepare for hand-to-sword combat by backing up, which brought me close to one of the unharmed houses. What I didn't expect for it was to spontaneously combust in a wall of red and ash. Jonah was before me, the building was collapsing from the left to the right, so of course I ran right, but wasn't fast enough to dodge a falling rock because I could barely see. A whole segment of the house landed on me. The wing, which I must have unfortunately spread out, ended up in more pieces than the other. After the dust must have settled and the burning began, Jonah wanted to reassure himself that I was dead and began digging me up until he found me heavily breathing and mostly covered in more rocks, barely hanging on to my consciousness. My left arm was out. He twisted it until he could easily reach the inside of my wrist and began stabbing the sword into it. It took him several minutes to reach my main artery, but as he did and continued to threaten you while doing so, I lost it. But I know he got away. I saw how he teleported. I hope he died, but I'm sure he didn't." He finished talking the same time he had wrapped his upper body so tightly, if he had to breathe deeply he couldn't. Putting on an undershirt, a blouse, and the long brown shirt with the belt was enough to have even Dew believe the dragon hybrid never had curves to begin with. Even in new unstained clothes, fresh bandages and new stitches, Avery looked almost as broken as when he had appeared in the king's office. Even though his eyes had taken on a calming color, they irritated Dew in a way he couldn't get himself to break contact. He knew it must have been his partner's original eye color. What the return of it meant for Avery's health was reason for concern, though. The knight limped on one foot, which must have partially broken, and the imbalance in the absence of the other wing caused him to rely on Dew to walk steadily. The Merling had hoped waking up after sleeping through another night would mean the patient would be doing better. In Avery's case, he wasn't all that sure. With pained laughter, the knight explained how long it had taken the nurse to amputate his crushed and cut wing. Dew believed to hear the wish to be relieved of the other one as well. His partner waited in the room upstairs while Dew did what he always did around the time downstairs in the kitchen. Sean troubled himself to procure a simple cane for the limping man. Josephine's reaction to the news was hardly categorized into happiness or jealousy. She smiled and nodded without saying a word and went on with her duty. Now she felt what he used to, and the other way around. Dew caught himself pitying her, even though the feeling could barely cause anything but harm by driving the pitied person deeper into depression. When the time came, Avery climbed down the stairs and slowly accompanied the other one to a place he already knew well enough. "Did she mention to you why she wants to see me?" Dew shrugged, loosening his eyes from the wheels of the wagon to look at the cane. In his head he already went through scenario after scenario, with every door and corner passing by, in which he had to catch the limping person. "I assume worry and interest about your well-being, and because you murdered her father." "Two very polar interests, don't you think?" Avery noted. He huffed amusedly before answering. "She won't kill you, that's for sure. I know that she thinks it's good that he's dead. I'd like her to try. At first I didn't believe her to be power-hungry, but I guess since knowing that she tried to kill her own father, I'm not surprised anymore." The servant nearly tripped over his own feet. "What?" His partner chuckled dryly, nearly stumbling as well, and explained, "Yeah, you relaxed pretty quickly after Alba broke her arm. Then there were your frequent visits and all of that." Ophelia then involuntarily confirmed the rest to me. "Talking about her, she is gone now, so there's one less person staring at me angrily." "Then why, if you knew, I would have expected you to have already mentioned it or tried to stop her somehow. Or did you think she gave up?" They reached the first part in the road towards the dining room. Avery stayed silent for a moment. "I guess I just wanted to leave everything to chance, and what was I supposed to do? Snitch? With what evidence and for what use? There is no other heir to the throne, and it isn't like he never thought about quitting life before." "Would have been better that way," Dew growled, staring forwards where he could already spot the end of the long table. "Then you wouldn't have to feel guilty." The other shrugged while deep in thoughts. "And what's that smell on you, so bitter?" Dew continued out of the blue. "Just roots. It'll fade in a bit." Dew's head jolted around to face him, but Avery looked at him without any specific expression. "What? Inhaling that stuff is the only kind of sedation I can get. I've been doing that for more than a year now." He almost stopped in his step when there was a second pair of eyes directed towards him upon entering the dining room. The bags under his eyes had gotten better, and the way his face lit up as soon as the hybrid entered behind Dew was as if someone had offered him several weeks of paid vacation. Avery reacted the opposite way, stepping before his partner and blocking the man's view on him with both wing and arm. It's okay. The situation is resolved," Aaron comfortingly cajoled him while pointing at the chairs opposite to him. The Queen, sitting where she always sat, appeared relaxed in the company of the General, who had apparently betrayed her father 2 weeks ago. "He just got back. His horse ran away. He doesn't have an ill motif," she explained instead of the man. Avery hesitantly closed his wing again and made his way towards the chairs, pulling one of them back further than necessary to seat himself on. Dew followed a little further behind and placed the breakfast before Alba, while keeping an eye on the General in confusion. "How'd the ground taste?" Avery spat, leaning back, a twitch of his wing followed due to the amputation wound, and crossing his arms. The General wasn't taken aback for a moment. "Listen, I didn't think that this could work, like, at all." "And it didn't. Why do you think I killed him?" "That was the best possible outcome there was," Aaron exclaimed loudly, waving around his arms as if he was trapped in a swarm of mosquitoes. "Possibly, but not really for me. And now you're completely avoiding your attention of deliberately having Dew be killed. For what? For my freedom?" he mocked. The servant positioned himself slightly behind his partner's chair, throwing a concerned glance at the Queen. She didn't notice, though. Her visual attention was directed fully towards her plate she dug into. "Your idea would have included destroying the entirety of an enemy camp," the General argued, but the opposite to him talked back. "The other option was locking them in and burning them alive. Same outcome for them, one dead husband for me. Great, isn't it?" "Between deciding whether to use a dead torch or a human explosion, I'd rather pick the torch." At this point, Aaron resembled a child, unwilling to admit to the other that he was morally in the wrong, or rather in a grey zone. "I would have simply done it. Then I would have thought about a way to safely get out of the castle. I didn't exactly have a lot of time after being picked up from the side of the rope by your dear colleague. Talking about him, do you know the members of his unit? I'd like to take a look at it." The man seemed a little confused at the request, but muttered, "Sure do," before searching through his pockets. He slid a folded piece of paper over to the hybrid, who immediately opened it up. "The double crossed-out names are the deceased ones, and the single crossed-out ones the ones that are left?" he asked upon examining one of the 3 lists squeezed into the very limited space of the paper. "Not exactly. All crossed-out names are dead, but we don't know the reason for the ones with a single line. The names smudged are the men that are left," Aaron corrected. "That makes it easier. Now I would be very pleased if you could organize me a detailed report on where I can find this Peter Lawrence. I'd like to have a little chat with him about the mysteriously deceased knight called Claudius," he demanded sharply, neatly folding the lists back together. The horror entering Aaron's face was immediate. "He was supposed to watch you. We can go find him." "The guy did his job pretty badly, giving my dead body to someone else from his unit. I just heard the other man scream Peter's name while he bled out on the camp bed." Dew was lost regarding what they were talking about exactly, but it cleared itself up as Avery added, "They would have taken Sue if you hadn't taken care of her already. They really didn't like my wings, tried to use them and all. I'd almost consider myself lucky for waking up before." "I will take care of it." The General stopped the other before he could possibly go into detail. Dew already felt as if he had to vomit the little he had in his stomach. "Do you have anything in particular in your mind?" Even without seeing Avery's face, Dew knew he was smiling sadistically as he said, "I do, I sure do. I will keep him entertained for a few hours instead of less than 10 seconds. Without scales, he practically asks for it."